So just a word of introduction about our series for this Lenten season. It's okay. That is, if you want the silence of a day room, that won't be here. So, middle school youth, we're glad to have you up there. There they are. So, our series over these 5 weeks, I've called Eyewitness to Holy Week. And what it presents each week is a monologue. Remember when Lenten midweek services had someone from the church dressed in a bathrobe? And I think I was Nicodemus one year. I don't remember. But these are a little bit different. I think you'll find them very intriguing. They are first-person monologues about people who participated in Holy Week, who were a part of the story of Holy Week from Palm Sunday to Maundy Thursday to Good Friday to the burial of Christ and to the events of Easter morning. So each of these is maybe about 15 minutes, and then we'll have time just for a little bit of conversation. I expect that maybe we'll be through by 7 o'clock or a little after that. Tom Spadero, thank you for video recording. This will be on our new YouTube page, FLCS Live, which doesn't require signing up as one would have to do for Facebook, but just go right to YouTube and you'll be able to see these, and they'll remain archived. And subscribe. But we are over 50. But the more people that subscribe, the more people will be able to view the product that's there. So, as you can see here, there are a number of episodes. We're going to be starting from the very beginning, as Maria in Sound of Music says, a very good place to start. And I'll just give you a hint. This is someone that you've read about in the New Testament, but I'll bet you never gave this person a second thought. And there we go. Come on.
I'm married to a cat lady. Yeah, you know the type. I don't have to explain. Well, a cat lady, except with donkeys. A donkey lady.
In the Christian tradition, Palm Sunday is 1 week before Easter Sunday. It commemorates the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem for what we today call Passion or Holy Week. It is the defining event that begins the countdown of Jesus' time on earth.
We live in Bethphage, my wife and I. It's a small village about halfway from Bethany to Jerusalem. It's on the east side of the Mount of Olives. It's not far from the mountaintop. We're not rich, not poor. We're as normal can be. We own a small shop that sells firewood for camping to pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem. Our most valuable possession, however, a donkey. Kind of an older donkey, and her foal. It's nearly weaned, never been ridden, and still follows its mother around. Yes, I'm irritated at my wife. Wean it, break it, and the colt is worth more. But my wife, it's like it's her precious child. She treats it like a precious child. She won't let me train it, won't even let me touch it. Donkey lady. We make extra money by renting out the donkey to those who are fatigued from walking up the Mount of Olives. And it would double if I could rent out that colt. Traffic has increased due to, well, let's just say, these are exciting and dangerous times. Weeks ago, less than 3 miles from here in the village of Bethany, Lazarus was raised from the dead by Jesus. I mean, I don't know. It's the story, and you don't go making things up like that. Lots of people hope to see Lazarus and, verify what's happened to him. It's a pretty big deal. He was dead for days, 4, I'm pretty sure. So that's the exciting part. The dangerous, well, I've heard some of the travelers are looking for ways to kill Lazarus, eliminate any trace of Jesus' ability to raise people from the dead. It's just what I've heard. So it's the Sunday before Passover. Already a steady stream of people on the road through our village coming from the countryside to Jerusalem to celebrate. The donkey lady and I are outside preparing to paint some lamb's blood above the door frame and on either side. We've got our hyssop branches to use as paintbrushes. This is not a required part of modern Passover activities, but, we like the reminder of the Passover story from Exodus. We hear a noise behind us. Turn around, 2 men untying our donkey and the foal, stealing in broad daylight. Hey, I shout. And they freeze. They just stare. What are you doing? Can't believe how brazen. I mean, who do you think you are? Right there, right in front of our eyes. I'm getting all amped. I'm a strong guy. I chop wood for a living. Besides the point. This is not happening. No, sir, not today, right? One of them says, and his voice so soft, well, the Lord needs it. He'll send it back soon. It's like an angel has closed my mouth. I can't say anything. I look at donkey lady. She looks at me. We just nod our heads. And the men walk away with our most valuable possessions. Her precious baby. So a little while later, we hear a shout in the distance toward Bethany. And then a crowd comes into view, heading straight toward us, and we can hardly believe our eyes. Some guy is leading our donkey. Behind him, another man rides on our colt, robes draped over the colt like blankets, and he's sitting on top. We expect the colt to bolt toward us, to its home, to its manger, to feed. And the colt stays calm, follows its mother, passes us, heads toward Jerusalem. And a huge crowd follows the donkeys. I want an explanation. I pull this man aside. He's reluctant to stop and lose his place, so I walk with him. He tells me the man on the colt is Jesus. And behind him, his apostles and Lazarus. And then all the crowds of people. And some are the ones from Jerusalem who went to verify Lazarus is alive. Some are Passover pilgrims on the way to Jerusalem. Many look like they're from Galilee. Others are local from Bethany. And I walk to Donkey Lady, who is smiling from ear to ear, by the way. And I point. It's the Lord. It's Jesus. She just beams. He needs our donkey. And it's like a punch to the gut. Can this be the Messiah? The Lord who created the universe needs something? He needs something that we can give him? Ordinary people, a donkey lady and her husband meeting the Lord's need? I race to catch up with my donkeys, with Jesus. I reach him just as he crests the Mount of Olives and comes to a stop. And the noise of the crowd washes over and down the west side of the Mount of Olives. The uproar crashes into the Kidron Valley and onto the east side of the Temple Mount, echoing back to the Mount of Olives over an area so large, hundreds of acres with thousands of campfires. They smoke like pots of incense, fires of sacrifice. And the sun behind us reflects off of the golden temple in front of us through the smoke of more fires of sacrifice. Jesus rides down the west side of the Mount of Olives, and people throw palm branches onto the path in front of him, and some throw their cloaks on the ground, and the crowds nearest Jesus, they're delirious with joy. And some of us know, and some of us don't, but Jesus is fulfilling the prophecies of Isaiah and Zechariah about the King of Israel entering Jerusalem. And our unridden colt is a critical piece of the prophecy. Jesus needed our colt to fulfill prophecy. The people around the fires in the huge valley, they look up at Jesus and they see him as their king, their Messiah. They cheer, chant verses from the scriptures. Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. Hosanna to the Son of David. Wow. And Jesus goes down the steep path, and the sound of the thousands of people, it's overwhelming. Some of the Pharisees at the front of the crowd, they're furious. They know the crowd is acknowledging Jesus is the Messiah. They rebuke Jesus. They try to get him to quiet the crowd. With a look on his face I can only describe as sublime, he says, if the crowd is made to be quiet, the very stones on the ground will shout out. When the triumphant crowd approaches Jerusalem, and Jesus steps down from the donkey foal and quietly tells one of his apostles, take it back to its owner. I hear him. So I step up. I take my 2 donkeys. Jesus smiles. And he says 4 words to me. You met my need. Why is Donkey Lady not with me? What a moment. And I'm going to have to go back and try to recreate it for her. So I start back to the house, and the crowd stops. Jesus sits on the ground. And I'm pretty certain he's crying. I only hear a few tearful words, a lament over Jerusalem. And then I'm swallowed up by the crowd. I reach home. I hug her. She is the reason we were able to meet the Lord's need. And I tell her that. She was right to keep the colt unridden. I tell her that. I tell my wife. We keep track of Jesus over the next several weeks. It's hard to do, not because of lack of information, but because it's hard to tell truth from fiction. For the first week, Jesus teaches at the temple every day, always in conflict with the Jewish leaders. The Jewish leaders finally have enough, and they arrest Jesus, and they arrange for the Romans to execute him. Crucifixion. The body of Jesus disappears. The Jewish leaders say that his apostles stole the body. The rumor among the people is that Jesus rose from the dead. And then reports that Jesus is seen by hundreds of people, not just his followers. He is seen in Jerusalem and in Galilee. It's been about 7 weeks since Jesus rode our donkey, and we've decided to keep the colt, to never let it be ridden again. Well, my wife still treats it like a precious child. For 7 Sundays, I lead the colt to the top of the Mount of Olives. I relive in detail every moment of the day we met the need of Jesus. When I come to the top of the mountain, I just stand there, remembering the fires and the shouts, the palm leaves on the path. And then I return home with a feeling of disappointment for 6 Sundays. But on the 7th Sunday, in the distance is a group of men. I take the colt and we go. And as we get close, I see it's Jesus with his apostles. I am only about a stone's throw away. And Jesus starts rising in the air. He goes into the clouds and disappears. I walk toward the apostles, and there are these 2 men in dazzling white clothes approaching. Galileans, why are you standing there looking into the sky? This same Jesus will return in the same way he went into heaven. The apostles break out in praise and happiness, and they smile at me. They remember the colt. At least I think they do, but then they head to Jerusalem. I return home with the colt to my wife. He's gone now. He's really gone. I tell her of the story of Jesus rising in the air. She doesn't even seem surprised. We were willing to meet his need, she says. And many people were blessed. I know that should make me feel better, but I'm sad that he's gone. Now, we will meet the needs of his followers, she says. I'm so glad I married a donkey lady. Jesus says when we help others in his name, we are helping him, meeting his need, meeting the need of the Lord God of the universe.
So, what did you think?
Wow.
Oh my. So, what struck you? Anything in particular? Yes, Nicolette.
Meeting the need of God that God needed something.
Yeah. It's a pretty terrific sermon, wasn't it?
Yes.
In terms of, for anyone who would say, what could I give to Jesus? To say, well, in Jesus' name, give to your neighbor. Martin Luther, famous quote, God doesn't need your good works. Your neighbor does. And I thought that was part of the bottom line of this monologue. What else? Any surprises?
That it was the donkey owner we saw.
And apparently not a camel. Yeah. Yes, Eric.
I was surprised at that all the story, the backstory on Lazarus.
Yeah.
People were coming to the town to see what was going on about that, and maybe changing the story.
There's an interesting move that the scriptwriter made in this. And, for any of you who have been watching The Chosen, the same thing happens whenever you seek to dramatize the gospel story. The fact is, Lazarus only appears in the 4th gospel, and there's the way that John writes the 4th gospel, the triumphal entry into Jerusalem is right at the beginning of the gospel and not on Palm Sunday the way Matthew, Mark, and Luke record it. But I think it was kind of an interesting play that if you harmonize the stories, and the raising of Lazarus was a phenomenon that must have rippled through the city of Jerusalem, and then you connect it with Hosanna to the Son of David as Jesus enters the holy city, you just get something really quite wonderful. As long as you don't expect for it to be sort of foundational, this is thus saith the Lord, but rather the creativity of the writers of this monologue. By the way, the whole section about coming down the crest of the Mount of Olives and down into the eastern gate, and exactly the way one would experience it in Jerusalem. Even today, you start up at Gethsemane, and for those of us who did it on a wet day where the stones were really slippery, heading down, down, down. And just imagine thousands of people coming over the crest of that hill and going down to the holy city. I thought they captured that really, really well.
I think it changed some stereotypes of, the pictures we see is always it's flat and Jesus is flat. When he said coming down from the Mount of Olives, I'm thinking,
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, can you imagine the religious leaders? By the way, I'm always kind of struck when people who must have been Jewish, and remember the whole thing about painting, the blood on the lintel and the doorpost, and start talking about Jewish leaders like they're somebody else, This is our leaders, and I think that's something that we should always be a little more careful about, in particular, in our own day. But this whole, imagine the tableau of the religious leaders in the temple courts watching off to the east as thousands of people stream down from Gethsemane and enter in, waving those palm branches. I'm sure that to them it looked more like a protest march than it did a religious procession. These are people who are chanting and shouting. And if you read Psalm 118, I think it is, that is the psalm that was to have been shouted loud when Messiah would finally come. This is the day that the Lord has made. And believe me, they would not have been shy about rubbing the Romans' noses in it and the religious leaders who did not want to see a messianic entrance into their carefully controlled holy city. So, other thoughts? Was there anything that struck you that you said, now that never happened? Yes?
Well, it never occurred to me that they would want to kill Lazarus.
Well,
I've never thought about that.
yeah, the fact is, in John's gospel, it is said that Lazarus had a bullseye on his back, as did Jesus, after Lazarus was raised, that there was a plot to kill him as well, so as to put an end. Now, who knows whether they thought it was a resurrection, a Lazarus come forth, or whether it was just some sort of cooked up scheme, and they were going to catch these evildoers, and they were going to snuff it out while there was time. I'll leave that to you as you read the four Gospels to get inside the minds of those who were made so afraid, so desperate by the works that Jesus did and by the sort of tailwind as he enters the holy city. One thing I noticed that I thought was kind of an interesting way of harmonizing the texts was toward the end of the video where, actually it was closer to the front end of it, when the word goes out about grave robbers. That the followers of Jesus announce he is risen. His detractors from the start weave a story about grave robbers and about lying about a resurrection when none had happened. Read Matthew's gospel. We're in the year of Matthew. It's kind of good. It is the only one of the four gospels that actually shows the earthquake and the rumblings and the soldiers who are struck to the ground as though dead. In the other gospels, all of that had already taken place when the women arrive. But in the eerie silence of the early Sunday morning. But in Matthew's gospel, we get a little bit closer, and Matthew's gospel gives us, toward the end of the gospel, the plot that is cooked up by the religious leaders together with their police force to bribe the soldiers who were there to say that Jesus' body had been stolen away. And this was all a lie. A lie that Matthew says is told to this very day. Whenever that very day was. So, other thoughts? Yes?
Would there have been a cultural reason why his wife didn't go with him? Or did she just not want to walk?
I don't know. I really don't know at all that there would have been necessarily a cultural reason. And I am as certain as I could be that it is not just male Judeans or Galileans streaming down into Jerusalem. I just think it's kind of a wonderful literary device that this husband has this whole experience and comes home to tell his wife, who clearly is much smarter and wiser than he is, as is only right. Somebody mention this to Sharon if you get a chance that I said that. Thank you. Please.
Didn't he say that they had a business where he sold firewood? Maybe she had to stay home and sell firewood to the people that were camping, he called them.
Yes. Did you hear that part about the thousands of campfires? Yeah. By the way, the Mount of Olives is an enormous stretch of hilly territory. And so it would, for many of the people who would have come for Passover and then stayed for Shavuot, or the Feast of Weeks, they would have camped out. That's exactly where they would have been, camping out under the trees, buying firewood. You would have seen those. Imagine some of the photos you may have seen of the Civil War here in the U.S., where you would see the fires and you get a sense of the enormity of space there. It's still that way. Even though it's obviously built up and is very modern, there's still a sense of how enormous the Mount of Olives really was and continues to be. Yes, Patrick?
The name of the donkey owner and donkey wife? Do we know who they are?
No. Part of what I really appreciated about this, and why now you're stuck with looking at these for the next 5 weeks, is really great writing. You know, that this is not just pulling out of our biblical translation and giving it the old King James try, but thinking about the lives of the people, and in this particular case, people who were not the apostles, disciples. They were not abject followers of Jesus, but they were drawn into the story. Why? Because the donkey and the foal were needed. Were needed to fulfill prophecy, were needed to accompany and become the vehicle on which and through which the true Messiah enters the holy city. It could not have been otherwise. Remember, Jesus says, I have not come to abolish the law and the prophets, the Torah and the Nevi'im. I've not come to abolish, but to fulfill. And so here's a prophecy being fulfilled by these two people with this donkey and its foal, and this guy who is saying, these two animals are eating up all of our food and they're not producing any income. What could you possibly want to do with these animals? Hosanna, 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 right? God knew, so did this very wise woman, knew that they were going to play a role somehow, in some way, and she could say to her husband, we met his need, which is really the bottom line, I think, on this monologue. Yes, Nicolette.
In the Bible, it just says they went to get the dog and God said, okay, But here it's like, he comes now, what are you doing with my donkey? You're stealing for her.
Yeah.
It was so human to...
Yes. Because wouldn't you...
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's breaking into my car. I'm sorry. What in the world? And that the answer comes back, and this is the biblical text. This is a quotation. The Lord needs it. And that it makes this happen. The story proceeds because the Lord speaks and people believe. It's the same thing when it comes to the upper room. Prepare for us a place for us to celebrate the Passover. And how are they going to find the place where that upper room will be? Oh, it's simple. There'll be a man carrying a big jug of water on his head, which would never happen. Right. Which we would say, excuse me, what? Huh? And so this really follows on the way that Scripture itself talks about the little bits of providence, the sort of the God winks along the way in the midst of Holy Week. Not every one of these stories will be quite as upbeat and very sweet as this one was, but it's one reason why I wanted to start with it. That I think the whole idea that people, including you and me, participate in the ongoing story of our faith, not necessarily because we signed up, but because of circumstance, providence. We're called, we're drawn into the story. And it becomes then for us the question or the challenge, how will we live into the moment into which we're called? In this story of the donkey lady and her husband, all they needed to do was participate. They were called in, and, of course, in the hands of this wise woman, this donkey lady, to be able to say, he is ascended, and now we serve him by meeting the needs of his folks, of our neighbor, of those in need. So any other comments that you would want to make? I hope I'll see you a week from today, because there are a lot more stories. That we have 5 weeks of these, and you will meet some people. I know some people are already handicapping who we're going to meet over these next few weeks. We'll see how close you come. But thank you for this evening, and I'm truly glad if this was a blessing to you. Thanks. Yeah. And our poor youth are up there being so quiet.
No, they're in the church.
Okay.